All right, y'all. Let's do some more monsters today. So yesterday, we are doing a frost giant. This is the fruits of that so far. Definitely got a little bit of ways to go on the detail and adding some more textures and playing around with the materials a little more and the color variety, make it look a little more natural and not so monotone. Especially with the kind of leather clothing or the kind of hide clothing that he sort of got going on here. But I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out, all things considered, thus far, with regards to that character. So, yeah, just kind of feeling like for this, might not try and do like a finished piece like this every day. Quote unquote finished, or bring it to this level of finish. Try to do some more that are kind of that stand alone in their sketch format. But this one I did particularly enjoy doing, so it was a good way to kick things off. And today we rolled up the Mummy Lord, which is on page 229 of the Monster Manual. They've got a picture of a mummy. Obviously, most of the Monster Manual has some kind of illustration associated with it, but this particular mummy doesn't give me Mummy Lord vibes. It's just more so like a normal, quote unquote normal mummy, and they've definitely kind of steered clear with the design of selecting a specific cultural influence, which I think is a good move, frankly. That being said, it does kind of leave a lot of room for interpretation for this particular monster. So the Mummy Lord, they kind of give this sort of like general, like, oh, they thrive in ancient tombs and, kingdoms long forgotten. It has some very kind of Conan sword and sorcery sort of vibes with the description for this creature. So I think this could be an opportunity to have a lot of fun with stretching the human anatomy of the mummy a little bit and maybe adding some cool elements of, the kind of gauze drapery, or going with a more kind of like European quote-unquote mummy, which, kind of more refers to just like the mummified remains that have been uncovered, especially in colder climates where you kind of end up with these remains that are kind of these leathery skinned, gaunt, sort of like curled up figures, as opposed to the much more kind of like immaculately preserved pharaohs and, other high-class individuals in ancient Egyptian society. So there's kind of two directions to go with this. There's more than two directions, but here's the places that I'm thinking of going with it. So you can kind of go with the notion of a mummy being, in that more kind of Egyptian fashion, somebody who would have had in life the riches and the status and the resources to warrant being mummified. And so, obviously, we have the remains and the sarcophagi and such of these major pharaohs, but you wouldn't necessarily find the same kind of treatment given to a lower class individual in that society. So, hence, the illustration in the Monster Manual does have a lot of jewelry and riches kind of draped about the neck of the mummy, which makes a lot of sense. But since we're talking about a D&D fantasy universe, there is the kind of other direction, which is the mummy is sort of like a lone necromancer or wizard who has cast some kind of spell or worked some kind of magic to preserve their body and consciousness beyond the pale. And leaning on that undeath kind of element. So I kind of want to go a little bit in both directions, maybe, because I had this cool idea for sort of a mummy that kind of like, so there's the kind of the notion that mummies or pharaohs might be buried with their servants. I don't know about the historical accuracy of this. I know it's sort of like I literally just don't know, so I don't want to like speak out of out of a place of ignorance. But whether those servants were alive when they were buried with their respective lords or not, I think that notion is generally pretty spooky and could be an interesting thing to play with, kind of like a mummy that maybe incorporates the bodies of its servants to give it kind of like fresh limbs and stuff like that to work with. And so doing kind of a mummy that's sort of like got this kind of, centipede-like vibe with like many arms, perhaps maybe not multiple heads, because, we'd want, maybe some kind of headdress on the mummy. And it doesn't have to be kind of in that Egyptian style, but we'll just kind of pencil in something sort of ornate. And I was also thinking it'd be fun to sort of do like a death mask or something like that, which really does take on the qualities of some of those kind of like European mummies that I mentioned, which have the kind of gaunt face somewhat more preserved. Of course, still, I think it'd be fun because whether we're kind of taking that archetype of, it's a noble or a high-class member of society, or a kind of like a wizard that has, or a sorcerer that's sort of like worked this magic around them, either way, they'd probably still have plenty of adornments, right? They'd have jewels and riches and things that they'd collected in their lair, whether during or after their life. So they might have some of those kind of elements. And I think, with this initial sketch, we just kind of want to get out some of those ideas that we might want to play with later. So we'll go ahead and do that. So the multi-armed, maybe like he's got another arm kind of like sticking off the back. They're sort of like grafted on. Maybe there's a little bit more of a deformity. I do kind of like the idea, mummies are always depicted as these sort of like stick-thin kind of creatures, but I like the idea of doing something, adding something to design which would give them a little more thickness, kind of enhance their silhouette or their frame a little bit more, and give some of that notion of them having been a very rich and powerful individual. So this, I am not hating. So sort of some drapery here, and I do like the idea of doing like the kind of stereotypical sort of wrappings and gauze, just because I feel like that could be a fun way to show off the form with a lot of kind of like line and ink work. I'll probably post a video of the process that I went through with the frost giant, because I kind of I ended up coming back to my more familiar work process with this, where at one point I was trying to just kind of do a direct painting with some of the paint tools in Clip Studio, and that wasn't really working for me. I felt like I needed to break it down a little more because my understanding of color just isn't quite there, and so building it up and then doing kind of a multiply layer for the shadows and then going back in and kind of adding in some of those colors and highlights and other things just feels a little more comfortable to me. And for this one, though, I might even want it to be something that relies just a little bit more on that kind of like comic booky inking style, maybe leaning on something like a David Finch or like a Mark Silvestri kind of style for this one, and getting in there with the details and letting the details kind of establish the form. On the other hand, I do want there to be some consistency among all these creatures and monsters, so they could potentially be, utilized in a sort of cohesive portfolio or booklet that a DM could kind of bring to the table. The other thing we're trying to do with this, of course, is bring some kind of like personal flair to each of the creatures. So it is very much a kind of plug and play unique monster that has these features that a DM could easily grab onto and give that creature a little more flavor in the context of a campaign. So I think we'll have to... This one, I think, because yesterday's was a little more like, okay, we're going to randomly generate some attributes for this character, and then we're going to go ahead and draw the character based on that. This one is a little more freeform and more based on the concept of the monster versus the like the nature of this particular character. Some sad news I heard today, I believe. I should probably look this up, but I just saw it on Facebook from a convention that I follow because they had the actor as a guest at one point several years ago. Was it the actor who played the creature from the Black Lagoon, I believe, passed away? And, obviously, related, as that is one of the kind of like Universal Pictures, original kind of monsters. So that is sad to hear. But certainly like a hugely influential design, the creature from the Black Lagoon. So maybe we'll have to do something with that this month, or a creature like that, because it is a pretty neat design, especially for the time. I think there's a reason that, the creature from the Black Lagoon, I haven't seen the film myself. I've heard that as a movie, it's not the best of the kind of like monster movies from that era, but it certainly has one of the more, I think, interesting creatures, especially given that the creature really is a little bit more of a little bit less established as like a previously existing, folklore kind of creature. So this one, the head on this doesn't look quite like a mask. This looks more like a crown. So we'll kind of lean into that. And again, yesterday I was coming in here with some blues, just sketching in blue, because that is the classic color of the frost giant. And today we're going with this kind of more sandy color, just to kind of get into the vibes of dat mummy life, So, and this one I feel like we can afford to be, or rather it's preferable that we're a little more messy, that we kind of bring out that element. And I think if we were to take this to a finish, we'd want to do something to make the arms a little bit more idiosyncratic, give them a little bit more, I don't want to say randomness, but vary the size so that it's obvious that these arms came from different bodies, right? I think that would be pretty cool. Huh. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so I kind of like I like this initial sketch, and I realized I just put this on the same layer as the text, which I don't really necessarily want. So we're going to go ahead and copy that bad boy. And then we'll go ahead and clear that out on the layer below. Let me kind of move all this stuff around as we see fit. I'm going to take these notes, just kind of make them a little smaller there. And we'll take this little guy and we'll stick him over here. Now, one thing I was finding, I didn't do maybe as much kind of like photo research before going into this as I could have, but one cool thing that I did come across was like these, as I mentioned, like the European mummies that are kind of like in these sort of more like fetal position kind of poses. And, they've got the kind of feet sticking out. It has like if you're familiar with how Mike Mignola kind of does like skeletons and undead and stuff like that, it has that sort of vibe to it. And I kind of liked the idea of maybe a mummy that is kind of like stuck in that position but has some sort of apparatus or auxiliary element. Maybe their sarcophagus acts as sort of like an almost an incubator or something that they're able to utilize for mobility. I thought that would be kind of a cool concept. We've got to be careful with the, just be careful not to give them too much meat. And maybe enhance the size of the head, because the head, the reason it looks kind of like bigger on these mummified bodies is obviously because the mass of the head is so much skull. It's like a lot of bone, so it's not something that's going to shrivel up quite as much as, the torso, which obviously has lots of flesh and stuff that would decay and rot over time and just kind of like dry up. So we've got hands kind of coming off over here, sort of this fetal position pose, and then maybe I kind of like the idea of like him like floating in something. And I think I also want to take a look at some point at the mummy's abilities to see if there's something we can do with that, because something caught my eye in here as well, which is the dreadful glare. The mummy lord targets one creature it can see. They must make a saving throw or become frightened. And that kind of like, obviously accommodating for that. It's interesting because the image of the mummy and the standard mummy does have the dreadful glare ability. It has its eyes like gauzed over. So it's kind of funny that they, in the monster manual don't even lean into that as one of its like kind of like key abilities. So that could be something fun to kind of lean into, give them like big scary eyes, or maybe some kind of mask that it can lift up and reveal its terrible visage. Kind of work it from that angle, right? So this one, so to give the impression of it floating, maybe it has like kind of an ornate cape, with some shoulder pads maybe, that kind of like give it something that kind of pools on the ground. I kind of like that concept. That's kind of fun. And to kind of suit the kind of pose of this character, which is, it's a function of their the the actual like physical way that the body was preserved, this pose that we're kind of like working with. But it would also be kind of fun to incorporate that into the character, where they're kind of this more frightened, more reserved mummy. Maybe not one that is as... This one certainly very threatening and very kind of forward, very dominating. If we consider like the concept of the, incorporating its servants into its body. But then this one, more scared, more kind of like prone, or not prone to, prone to using magic to accomplish its goals. And you know what we may want to do is not even have it pooling on the ground, but just like having the shreds of the cape sort of like droop down like that. And kind of going from there. And then maybe even having like some big like kind of floating stone hands, kind of like Exodia hands, kind of like coming out from the side, because his own body is kind of like crippled and shriveled, and then doing something with these kind of like big hands that are like these like stone constructs or something. That could be sort of interesting. And I'm kind of just penciling this in here. It's probably not very clear, but maybe doing something with, the notion that whatever jewelry they'd be wearing would be like kind of like oversized for the now emaciated body that they have. So it's kind of like gives you a lot more droop to it. Not even droop's not the right word, but their drip got droop. That's awful. Don't quote that. But anyway, you get the idea. So not necessarily skin tight on there. So I think for this one, we probably want the legs to be a little bit bigger ultimately. But I sort of like where this concept is going. Really accentuate the jutting out of that rib cage there, and this scrunched up nature. I like the kind of neck here. It almost looks like a snake neck, like it's emerging out of like its lair or something. We could lean into that too if we wanted. At least the way that this is portrayed, I'm not loving the arms. Maybe they feel a little too, what's the word? A little too organic, just in the way that they're sketched. But they sort of detract from the silhouette of this kind of like hunched figure, and that is sort of detracting from the main thrust of what makes this a more unique design, right? So maybe instead we'll give him some kind of scepter that's kind of jutting off here, that he's sort of like clutching. Some kind of like nasty necromancer scepter sort of thing. Yeah, I like that. I like that better, Okay. not hating that by any means. And as Mummy Lords go, there's some leeway there to kind of play with, like, oh, is this character kind of like more of a neutral character? Are they kind of self-serving? Are they explicitly evil? Like, this guy, definitely evil. This guy, I don't know. His motives are less clear. Maybe he's even, just a good fellow who's undergoing the effects of some kind of curse. Or maybe he's like really evil and he's just, trying to hide the fact that he's evil by acting all scared and such. So this one is pretty fun. I like that. And it does feel like it'll be a less involved kind of sketch than this guy over here, of course. So let's go ahead and do another one. I'm trying to think, what else could we kind of lean into here? So we could do one that is kind of leaning more into the wizard kind of aspect, or another one that kind of takes the noble aspect but is a little more regal. I kind of like going that direction. I don't know if you've ever played, Warhammer Fantasy. I've never played Warhammer, but I have played Total War Warhammer, which features a faction called the Tomb Kings, which are sort of like a neutral undead faction. They're not like evil, but they definitely have that, like, they're definitely just straight up like pharaohs riding into battle, and everything is like a skeleton or mummy sort of type creature. So maybe we'll go with that kind of like wide kind of like shoulder thing to really enhance the notion that this is an important, a VIP, very important individual. Yeah, I don't exactly love the mask on this one. In fact, I think this particular person might just have a headdress. Ugh. Trying to draw a skull there. That was awful. It's fine, though. It's fine. We're okay. We'll kind of get into the details of that more later. This one may be like seated on some kind of throne. I don't know what exactly to do with this one. This one definitely feeling already more benevolent, perhaps. And in keeping with that, maybe less of a magic wielder and more of like an honorable warrior kept alive to guard something important, perhaps. And I like the idea of giving him just like a great big giant curved blade. Like just a wicked kind of curved sword. And giving him not armor, but just enhancing some of those elements of his former physical glory, even though he's still a corpse. And as such, I think doing something where he's kind of like seated. Maybe this leg would actually be the one that's leaning in, and this leg. I think I haven't put down his torso is not like leaning the right way to get the pose that I'm going for. It's sort of one of these, where he's got his hand on his knee. He's sitting calmly, waiting for opponents to enter his lair, his tomb, or wherever he's guarding. Almost kind of a casual confidence while still being sort of kind of in control of the situation, right? This is almost becoming like a samurai helmet that he's got on, which isn't totally out of bounds here, I think, based on how we've been talking about this guy. So I think we want to give him some kind of like gold or bronze sort of leg armor. And this guy maybe even unlike, unlike the previous mummy, his armor actually fits because there's some kind of intentionality behind his being left as an undead guardian. I think giving him like a cool belt to kind of play off of these other curves here would be pretty sick. And to really enhance the kind of thinness of the midriff here. Ooh, I like that. It kind of looks like an eye almost. And maybe, his helmet sort of actually does kind of like cover his face. That's a little too mechanical. I don't know if I like that. But I kind of like the idea of him, like, not having eyes showing, or they're just kind of like painted on or something, and his actual the thing that grants him his vision is like this big crystal or something on his belt. Yeah, we don't want to give him like a smile. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I think I might need some reference for that, whatever the mask happens to be. I actually really like this, the idea for this guy. Although I don't know if I love him for Mummy Lord, given that he's kind of got a little bit of a different, maybe like servant of Mummy Lord kind of thing going on. Which could also be like an interesting sort of addendum to like whichever character we end up going with here. And we're just playing around with some kind of pattern choices here. Maybe just giving him like kind of a helmet thing going on. Yeah, I kind of like that. Take some influence from that kind of Japanese style helm. And borrow some of these other design elements from throughout the costume. Definitely make this kind of more of a shredded and wispy kind of piece of garb. And the sword could maybe use some work. Yeah, now he's kind of losing some of that, I don't know, that kind of like lordly element. What does he need to enhance that? Maybe bring this down and it's like a kind of full-fledged sort of like cape thing back here. Now it looks like, because if we put this down below, it looks like he's just like squatting there, as opposed to being like seated, which is I think what we kind of want here more so, is him like on a sort of like throne or something like that. Like a stone block. This is like the Shogun mummy. Which I don't hate. I don't hate that as a concept. Okay, so these are three kind of like solid directions to sort of go in. And honestly, I'm still feeling like the one that I'm going to enjoy drawing the most. Well, it's either the first one or the second one. I think there's a little bit more to go off. This last one, I'm not feeling it quite as much, even though we spent a bit of time on it. I definitely feel like I blasted the first one out a little quicker. And the first one gives us some opportunities for that kind of like drapery. Not that the second one doesn't as well. I like this dude here. But let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is drop another layer, kind of turn the opacity down on these guys, and then get in here and refine a little bit more this sketch and see sort of where that takes us. I got to remember that these guys aren't like skeleton faced per se. They just have like these sort of like this gaunt kind of flesh. But then, of course, the shape of the skull would be very accentuated. He's got some kind of big crystal kind of like inlaid right there. And I kind of just scribbled these elements in at random, so they don't have to be kind of like perfectly figured out at this point, but these robes are kind of giving me a sort of like priestly class vibe, which is obviously a staple of mummy stuff. Classic Brendan Fraser 1999 mummy. I believe Imhotep is like a priest or something in that one who, of course, is cursed with the terrible, gift of like turning him into a horrible monster, horrible undead monster that will come to wreak havoc on, everybody's ancestors. Just a really just cool and good punishment for a guy who's like totally. Well, I don't even know if he's like evil or anything in the like when he starts out. I think he just like bones some guy's wife or something. like I don't think he actually I'm not sure if he's actually evil. Maybe he kills somebody. I can't remember the details. Either way, he comes back and does some evil kind of like Old Testament plaguey kind of stuff, and Brendan Fraser has to defeat him with the help of Rachel Weisz, right? They do a bang up job. It's like what we had that movie on VHS when I was a kid, and me and my brother loved that movie. We'd watch it all the time. Like I used to think it was like really scary, and then we started watching it, when my brother got a little older, and he was way less of a wuss than I was. So we'd watch The Mummy, and it like turns out The Mummy is like not a horror movie at all. It's just like a really fun kind of like adventure romp kind of movie. Definitely one of those movies that it's like I used to think that it was a bad movie and I only liked it because I was a kid, but now I think it's probably just actually a good movie. And maybe standards are just lower now. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. I can't remember if I talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp yesterday, but like Quantumania, I probably did. What a disappointment that whole thing was. I guess it wasn't really a disappointment. I didn't really expect much from the movie, to be honest. And I'm kind of scared for like Guardians of the Galaxy. Because it does feel like they're just spilling everything right there out in the open in the trailers, because that's exactly what they did with Quantumania. It's like, we're going to put the entire movie except for the part where the big master plan is to beat Kang with by like doing like a running of the ants, like stampede, and just smashing into him. So tis what it is. Tis what it is. A little aimless with this. I think these drapes are too big. I think they're too big. That's okay, though, for now. I don't know if I love the position of this like fifth arm. This guy probably needs like a scepter of some kind too. Like a proper mummy lord gotta have some kind of dope ass weapon, and this guy feeling like a scepter kind of guy, right? Definitely not a fighter like his big friend over here. Definitely a schemer. Although if he got his grubby mitts on you, he'd probably be pretty tough to shake. So I wanted to refine this a little more, but some of these elements I am just going to go ahead and sketch right in. Just because that's going to keep it a little bit simpler for now. I need to thin him out over here a little more. Yeah, after putting this much into this dude, I don't know. I kind of feel like he might be the way to go. He might be the way to go on this one. One thing we're missing, though, from the kind of original concept is this notion that he's sort of like hackneyed together. That is something I'd have to kind of develop further, I think. And how to get that across might be a project for later today or tomorrow morning. Tomorrow I think I want to do some fan art. I have some ideas for doing some kind of like fun little drawings based on like established kind of like superheroes and pop culture figures and stuff, and kind of turning them into D&D characters, which I think would be kind of fun little convention piece. Oh yeah, we got to give him like big gross nails. This guy. Yeah, I'm liking how this guy's turning out so far. One thing I realized, one thing that helped yesterday with the Frost Giant drawing was just kind of like doing some of the parts that I'm less comfortable with off stream. So kind of messy sketching, it's kind of fun to go with the flow, but then like refining, some of the bigger ideas and the pose and everything. Refining the pose, it was definitely nice to do that off stream and to be able to experiment with kind of capturing that painterly style to realize that this probably wasn't the way to go with that guy. Ooh, yeah, we got some. See, this I find just fun, like the kind of like drooping, like gauze. And because we don't really get that with these other versions, like this just feels too fun not to kind of go with it. You know what? In this hand, maybe we'll give him his scepter. I wonder if we want him like kind of holding it like. Maybe we have him with multiple scepters. This one kind of has like a shepherd's cane vibe, which I sort of like as like, him as like a priest of some kind, leading his flock to the slaughter. And maybe we give him his other arm here doing something. I don't know. I don't know what yet. I don't know if I love that, but just to roundabout make him a little more symmetrical. Although I did say I didn't want him to necessarily be symmetrical, but maybe we give up on that notion of, at least with this sketch, of the kind of like cobbled together from his followers sort of vibe, or that's something that you isn't necessarily apparent directly from the design, but is part of the backstory. Because you do want those elements to show through, but certain things you don't want to be too obvious, and you want to be like, hey, why does this guy have 6 arms? Nobody else in this tomb has 6 arms. Mummies aren't canonically supposed to have 6 arms. What's going on with that? And then you could find some kind of like manuscript where his lesser priests, performed some kind of ritual before he died, like grafted the limbs of a bunch of his followers onto him. He's dragging some TP behind him. Okay, I'm kind of digging where this is headed at the very least. Maybe we'll give him like some kind of like ceremonial knife in this hand. He's kind of like grasping. And this arm sort of like raised aloft. Maybe with, some kind of like magic potion or some such that's spewing into the air. Ooh, I kind of like that. Yeah, this is actually kind of sick. I'm digging this so far. I'm digging the vibes here. The vibes are good on this guy. I mean, they're terrifying. They're horrible, but the vibes are actually sick on this dude. Yeah, I think I might continue with this guy then as the day progresses, so to speak. And I might actually go ahead and see about finishing the Frost Giant too. Refining this one a little more, getting into a place where it is, time for inking. And then going and finishing up the Frost Giant, kind of keeping it rolling. Originally, I was thinking of this as like a challenge, kind of like Inktober, where I do, a illustration every day, right? Or something, that I would post on social. And I think what I more want to do is, come to a place where I'm satisfied with each design or illustration every day. So even if the design isn't as stellar, at least I'm satisfied with what's happening with the piece in other regards. And that's kind of how I feel with Frost Giant. Like, he's not, I don't think, anywhere near as intricate, certainly. But I like the little backstory that I kind of came up with for him, and I'll probably be posting that as part of the process for this dude. As well as in some upcoming projects and materials, which I'll have available. So yeah, I think, we've been going for like an hour. That feels good on this guy so far. Maybe I should go in and just do my due diligence on these other two, or maybe even think up a couple more ideas, which I might do off stream. Let's see. Let's go ahead and see what comes of this guy. Maybe we'll clean up these shapes a little bit with this one. I think I made his hands a little too big, maybe. I don't know. His arm. Ugh, I'm not doing a very good job of refining here. Hold on. So I did do the bulk of the Frost Giant this morning. That might be why I'm already a little fatigued, as it were. But that's okay. We must listen to what our bodies tell us about our arting. Oh, thank you, Sam. welcome to the partay. Yeah, it's a Ruana cloak that I crafted for myself with a piece of felted fabric. So it's just a piece of fabric with a slit cut up the middle, about halfway, and then you just wear it like so. Thank you for joining, by the way. Always good to not be in here by my lonesome. It's unironically very nice. Thank you. Yes, it is cozy. It is actually pretty cozy. I was hoping to get something that was like actually wool, but wool is very expensive, and depending on what kind of fabric you get, if it's you might have to sew it. I didn't want to have to sew it, so this thing was on sale. These were on sale for like $5 a yard at Joann Fabric, so just went with that. Your drawings here look excellent. Thank you. Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're getting back into the drawing a little bit. Yeah, same with me. Well, not exactly. I went to a comic convention. I tabled there last weekend. It went okay. Sales weren't where I'd hoped they'd be, but it was a good start. But point being, the whole week prior to that, I was like not drawing. I was just prepping stuff and printing things and getting my display ready and stuff like that because it was my first con. So that was good. But now I'm trying to do this, like, design a new monster thing, sort of like randomly from the Dungeon Masters or the Monster Manual, like every day. So today is Mummy Lord. And then this is what I got up to yesterday with this frost giant guy. I'm still like finishing up, but it's in a decent spot for the time being. So I am on my canvas right now. Yes. Yeah, I haven't figured out. Actually, I actually am not drawing on my iPad nearly as much anymore. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's easier to do my workflow in general. When I have my full computer and everything, it's easier to stream and whatnot. I actually... I started actually just starting to record the time lapses on my Clip Studio files. I didn't know that was an option until recently, or it might have been part of an update or something. But that means that I can take some of this stuff that I'm working on and not have to worry about if I recorded it or not, and it's like a little bit more stable to watch than when I'm like zooming in and out and everything. So if I'm just like recording it with like OBS or something, it'll get a little crazy. But with the time-lapse recording, you just watch all the lines as they go down. So it's nice. Yeah, a little bit less space now that you've moved out of your old place. How are your cats doing, Sam? With the move. Yeah, definitely. Adaptability is key. Nice, nice. Okay, good to hear your cats are enjoying the sun. Um, that is good. Yeah, I'm kind of just putting down some random lines on this cloak piece to go for later. I think like this guy over here is the one that's calling to me the most. Um, but I do like these other two. I do like these other two fellows. So earlier, Sam, I was talking like so kind of like three different directions to go with this. There's sort of the classic mummy, in this case with a little bit of a spin on the far left over here with this guy, where he's sort of like taken the limbs of the servants that he's been entombed with, and has used them for his own. And then this middle one is kind of more of a solitary wizard type mummy. So I was kind of talking at the beginning of this about, thinking through, like, how do the mummy has been done to death as a design, but the mummy in the monster manual for D&D is like pretty sparsely designed. It doesn't take any particular cultural influence. It's just sort of like gauzed up and has a bunch of jewelry on it. So there's like a lot of room for exploration there. And traditionally, like historically speaking, you would only be preserved in this way if you were somebody with a lot of wealth and power and status. But if you were like a wizard or a sorcerer, obviously you would have the capability to kind of like do this by yourself or without being a person of like a particular status. So this middle guy is sort of like representing that ilk. And the pose is kind of more inspired by some of like the mummified European remains that have been found in colder climates, where they're all like scrunched up and kind of in a fetal position sort of thing. And then this last guy is a little more like regal, neutral, kind of lawful warrior type mummy guy. So, yeah. Yeah, the first one is definitely, I think it's just the room that you can play with the drapery and the multiple limbs and everything. There's just like a lot to go with there. The second one I was originally going to have, and I think I might return to this at some point later, but the middle one I was thinking, what if it was in like a fetal position, but it was in like some kind of container or like sarcophagus-like thing that sort of had a construct as the kind of motor apparatus for him instead of his own body. But then I started drawing some like Exodia-looking arms around it, and it just I didn't like the vibes on it, and so I thought, it'd be fun to just do like one guy. And so for these, I'm thinking almost like, this guy could be a servant or like a kind of a minion of this first guy, and then I don't know about the last guy. I don't know what I'm going to do with him yet. If anything, I might just kind of refine these lines and then kind of leave him be, unless anything really jumps out at me as I'm doing that. I can see the second one doing really well in a particular composition. Yeah, exactly. I think he needs some kind of Because you can see this pose is, obviously way less dynamic on its own than this. Well, this guy has just like so many arms that it's like, of course there's some dynamism to that. But this guy, I think with the right lighting and the right angle and maybe adjusting the proportions a little bit more, could be very striking. But right now, I think especially in comparison to these other two, he just looks very closed in, and that gives him much less a mummy lord and much more like a sort of, just a scared guy. I don't know. He's not having a great time. So I don't know what exactly to do with that. Lordship and dominion is scary. Yes, it is. It is pretty spooky. Alrighty. Well, it was good to see you, Sam. Thanks for stopping by. Probably just gonna clean up these sketches a little bit more and then hop off. And yesterday, so with this frost giant guy, I pretty much just I just did the initial sketch and then I came in and did everything else later. So you won't be missing anything too crazy. But really appreciate you stopping in and saying hi and chatting for a bit. Yeah, we'll have to hop on Discord soon. I might need to adjust this guy's arm a little bit. Because his shoulder would kind of be more up here, right? Do like the kind of like gaunt, sort of like stretched flesh where his, would those be his lats? I think they'd be his lats. Is that what that's called? The latissimus dorsi. Kind of muscles over here on the side. Yeah, I think number one is going to be the way to go here, but oops. I'll give this guy kind of like a mask or something. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, maybe this helmet is a little too samurai. I don't hate it though. The plates come down a little bit. Yeah, he doesn't quite look as lordly. There's something here. There's something here with this guy. I think if he had a cool enough sword. And maybe a different cape. Maybe we ditch the cape altogether in favor of something else. Maybe more like, it's not even like a half cape, but it just kind of comes down around like that. Really just enhance his silhouette and then also make his overall silhouette less rounded, because the cape kind of rounds it out where it has these nice sharp edges and stuff, and maybe give him a little bit more kind of going on down here, like he has his own kind of ceremonial knife or something, some other things around the waist to give him a little bit more of that regal look that we were kind of looking for. Then we started on this guy. Well, I like the place that these three are in for now. Obviously, I'll have to go back in and refine this guy a little more, but ooh, I've been drawing for a while, off stream as well, so I think we're going to call it for the time being. Trying to make this challenge that I'm doing sustainable, not burn myself out too much, and make time for other projects. So I think that's going to be it for today. For the streaming portion. And what I'll probably do is go ahead and just refine up this first drawing, continue working on that, and get together kind of more of an illustration like this frost giant boy. And hopefully by the end of the month we'll have a bunch of these to work into those DM addendum kind of manual thingies that I'm thinking about making. So all right, cool. Well, happy drawing, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. If you were able to watch this, I was joined by my buddy Sam, of course. But if you ever happen to stop in, feel free to say hi or chat shoot me a comment, subscribe, like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Alrighty. Afternoon, ladies and gents. We'll see you next time.